Day 3 of the AGRF2021 Summit. It's been an exciting week. We have over 8,000 participants online and from 102 countries. Today's focus, about the youth. In 2015, it was estimated that we had 226 million youth in the continent. This number is expected to grow by 42% in 2030. How do we harness the power of a youthful population to transform food systems? On our panel today, we are honored to have the Chief Administrative Secretary at the Ministry of Agriculture, Ms. Annie Nyaga. We have Ms. Jennifer Byrne, the Acting Managing Director of the AGRF and Head of Partnerships for AGRA. We have Dr. George Bigirwa, AGRA's Deputy Vice President for Program Innovations and Delivery. And online, we are joined by Ms. Wangari Kuria, Founder, Farmer on Fire, and Mr. George Agbula, Global Hunger Fighter Consultant, Youth in Agriculture. Thank you for joining us today. So I think we'll start with you, George, just to speak about the launch of the Center of Excellence for Seed Systems in Africa. Tell us the opportunities there and what's happening for the youth.
Thank you very much, Madam Moderator. Today we are happy to announce the Center of Excellence for Seed Systems in Africa. This is a center which is going to be housed at AGRA, and there are a number of reasons why AGRA is hosting this center. Number one, it's based on AGRA's track record in terms of the kind of support it has given to seed companies in a number of countries. Today we are talking of about 109 homegrown seed companies AGRA has helped to establish in 18 African countries. We have supported human capacity development, and today we are talking of over 700 crop breeders, and some of these are youth, and they are contributing hugely in the development of different varieties. And in total, we have about 658 crop varieties released, of which 60% is being grown by our farmers. And some of these farmers are youth. We have also trained 40,000 agro dealers. These are people who live in rural areas and help farmers to access inputs like seeds. In 2006, farmers were walking almost 30 kilometers to access inputs. But today, that distance has been reduced to less than 10 kilometers. We have also supported governments to make policy reforms. Now it is easy to release varieties. It is easy for private sector companies to operate in a number of countries. It is easy for public varieties to be accessed by private seed companies, and even production of early generation seed, which was a domain of governments. Now, specifically how the youth can be or can play a big role in this new center is in various ways. Number one, they can become seed company owners. In some countries, we have got youth who are running some of these seed companies. For instance, in Uganda, we have a company called Equator. It is run by a youth who is just 32 years. And he has made tremendous progress in terms of the amount of seed he's producing. Youth can still play a big role as agro dealers, selling seed to farmers. They can also play a role in providing advisory services as village-based advisors or community-based advisors. And some of them are even providing machinery to help companies in processing, in shelling, in threshing crops. So they're able to make money and make a contribution in the seed sector. So there are many opportunities where indeed youth can play a big role in the seed industry.
Thank you.
And we are ready to support them.
Thank you so much, Dr. Bigira, and congratulations on the launch of CISA. We look forward to tracking and looking at how the progress for youth within the centers and the opportunities which are there. I want to come to you, Jennifer. Just speak to us a little bit about how the AGRF is working to elevate the discussions for youth and their participation in agriculture. You can also talk to us about why this is important.
No, absolutely. I think it's critical. We cannot talk about food systems transformation if we do not talk about the role of our young people, because this is also about their future, right? AGRF is the largest advocacy platform and event on agriculture and food systems transformation in Africa. We have to make young people, we have to put them at the heart of this dialogue, and that is exactly what we're doing. So there are different ways in terms of how they are engaged. The Youth Town Hall is one of those, in which we make sure that every year we have an event specifically focused on youth, where they have the opportunity to engage with leaders, being corporate or government leaders and other actors as well, to voice and articulate their priorities, to also challenge them and ask questions in terms of how they are putting the policies and the investments and interventions in place to make sure that their future is more food secure and they will have access to nutritious food. But there are other ways in how we do it. We don't isolate our youth only in the Youth Town Hall. Throughout the program, we ensure that we engage with young entrepreneurs, young farmers, young women entrepreneurs as well, and other type of youth leaders. For example, Good Morning AGRF is a session that we have every morning where young SMEs and farmers are interviewing prominent participants in the AGRF as well. And they talk about a variety of things, about climate change. They talk about investments in seed production, but also many of the policy challenges that we have. We also, for example, have the Agribusiness Deal Room, where we're bringing together so many SMEs from across the continent and matching them with investments and partners. And as a highlight, we also, of course, have our Go Getters platform, one of the 10 thematic platforms of the AGRF. We're working year-round with young entrepreneurs, and every year we have an award for the best female and the best male entrepreneur at the AGRF. So it's actually in different ways how we're engaging youth, because they are the future of tomorrow. And we have a responsibility to make agriculture a lot more attractive for our youth. Thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer. I think right now we'll pivot to Cass Anyaga. I mean, at the heart of what you do is the 4K clubs. Could you please tell us what it is all about, the history, the objectives, and when and why they were introduced?
Thank you, Catherine. Let me begin by noting the history of the 4K clubs. The clubs date back in the 90s. We had the first clubs introduced into the country in 1963. And this was as a result of our leaders traveling and having a benchmark trip to countries where the model had quite developed. And when our leaders went to the US that time, that was the benchmark country that was chosen, our leaders borrowed the 4K clubs model. And we started then, we customized it, which is popularly known as 4K. It is 4H, known as 4H globally. But in Kenya, we customized it to our own localized needs. So we called it 4K clubs. And once the clubs were established back in 1962, of course, the club activities started declining because of how the club activities were being used. I remember when you do something in the classroom, you'd be sent by your teachers to, you'd be punished using these agricultural clubs. You'd be told, go and weed, go water the plants, and so forth. So for 30 years, the clubs were non-existent because of the negative perception that was associated with them. But in the wake of us realizing the critical role that agriculture plays, and also having challenges in how our youth has been engaged in the agricultural sector, His Excellency the President gave an instruction that we then engineer programs that are then very deliberate to engage children and youth in agriculture at very formative ages. That is what has led to the rebirth of the revamped and the remodeled 4K clubs, which again now have a different focus, where we are focusing on the positive youth development model. We are saying that in the heart of us, reintroducing the agricultural clubs in all the primary schools in the country, the young farmer clubs in all the secondary schools in the country. We are saying that the positive youth development model will be the main model in terms of the anchor in the programming. And the positive youth development model, our focus would be to bring up a holistic child through agriculture. A child who is competent, who has character, who is able to make a contribution to their country, who's caring, and also is able to pass on the values of development, not only to themselves, but also to the community at large. So again, the revamped 4K clubs, we also have a focus on the thematic areas that we'll be focusing on, and this is a very important discussion that we are having even at this Food Systems Summit, where we are saying that our agricultural activities for the millions of children in our education system, of course, they'll be coordinated around environmental conservation to be able to have activities on mitigation of climate change. We'll have agricultural projects, of course, cutting across crop development, livestock and fisheries, civic engagement and citizenship, nutrition and healthy living, and also STEM. Again, the coordination is between all these critical levels of education, and ensuring that the activities are quite structured so that they can be able to reach the child. Another aspect, lastly, is ensuring that the learnings from these clubs is then transferred to the home setting, so that also children become agents of change to their communities as well. And the most critical thing to also make an appeal from, even as we do all this, is to ensure that then the continent embraces the revival or the reestablishment, and also the continued enhancement and the coordination of the school-based agricultural clubs, so that our children can have basic knowledge on production, consumption, and also the whole agricultural process and value chains.
Thank you so much. And I think it's really brilliant to see how we bring children to have that appreciation for what is grown, what they eat, and getting them to participate. And I want to pivot that discussion to actually a younger farmer, Wangari Kuria, founder, Farmer on Fire. Wangari, tell us a little bit about your journey and give us some reflections about what drives you and why you decided to focus on agriculture.
Thank you so much. Thank you even for having me on this forum. As a youth, for me, I didn't set out to become a farmer, but I am a farmer in Kitengela, and I do exciting videos to entice people into agriculture. But I started the path by going to campus, reading, getting into the corporate world, and then I was retrenched. And then I remembered my mom was a farmer, so I started a kitchen garden that now grew to Farmer on Fire. But just to go back, when I was growing up, my mom was a farmer as well, but I never saw her make money from what she was doing. So I never thought of it as a career path, but yet here I am, and circumstances have forced me into this line of work, and I've taken it on, and I've taken to be the voice of small-scale farmers, to also represent and tell the young people that you might have a master's degree as myself, but you can still be a farmer, whether part-time, whether a side hustle, or a main hustle as myself.
That's really brilliant. And I want to also invite George Agbula. George is online with us. He is a global hunger fighter and a consultant youth in agriculture. George, are you there?
Yes, Catherine. It's good to join you this morning.
We are happy to have you. George, could you talk to us and reflect on the key themes for the summit, as in your experience as a young person involved in African agriculture? Why is it important? What do we need to focus on?
Yeah, thank you for that question. And exciting time to join my colleagues, Farmer on Fire as well, to share this discussion. I think Jennifer and the other speakers has already mentioned some of the important things which is, first of all, having young people invited to the table and having them play a critical role. But over my few years of careers and from some of the things I've learned, particularly through this AGRF, shows that there are enormous opportunities that exist in the agricultural sector, whether you want to define it from the value chain approach or you want to define it from the livestock approach as well. So, but if you look at our African agricultural settings right now, I think one thing that is missing is that myopic view of saying that young people should get into agriculture, but limiting them to production alone. And also, by the time we then limit them to production, we are also looking at them producing at a very small scale. But that shouldn't be the case. The case should be that we are looking at young people taking on bigger farms, taking up bigger value chains approach, being plant breeder, changing narratives across the value chains, and the likes of the Go Getters Award, the Pitch AgriDec Award makes it looks interesting to ensure that we have young people being supported by the resources they need. Another thing that I think occur critically for me is the fact that if you look at our statistics today, the FAO is saying that by the time we involve young people in agriculture, we can drive production up to 60%. That's an evidence that you can achieve food security without young people playing that role. And then you can achieve sustainability in your food production without having those young kids for the 4-H club and all of that involved in agriculture to know how they can produce their food. But to sum it up, on the other hand, current statistics shows that we have less than 2% of African graduates involved in agriculture. So where are the remaining 98% of them? We need to ask ourselves. Most of them work in oil companies, they want to work in banks and the like. So that means there's a missing link. How do we make agriculture attractive? And not only that, how do we make it sustainable and income generating sector for them? So that comes the question, which I think AGRF, for instance, is trying to address. And thanks to the organizers for funding some of these Young Innovators Award, giving them the necessary tools and equipment and finances that they need. I often say that we can't tell young people that because you hit yesterday, that you won't hit again today. So that means financing young people in agriculture doesn't necessarily have to be a one-step approach. It has to be a continuous exercise whereby we have to continue to do it so that we can expand and increase the bulk of the young people that come into agriculture. So, Catherine, to wrap it up to you, you mentioned that in your statistics that we have over 226 million young people. Let's ask ourselves, what do we need to get these young people involved in agriculture? Not only in production, because we won't look at production right now. We will look at production up to the end of the value chain. What do we need to get them involved? And I think that's where our discussion should continually focus. Thank you.
Thank you, George and John. And I'll come back to you because I feel like you should help us answer that question that you've asked last. But I'm going to go to the chat and see, what questions are there. And for you, Dr. George, what advice do you give young scientists wanting to build a career in agriculture?
Yeah. See, my namesake George did point out one important aspect, that in agriculture, there's a tendency just to focus on one component, and that is production, which is wrong. Agriculture is broad. You can talk about processing, you can talk about value addition, you can talk about transportation, you can talk about mechanization, there's digitization. So for the youth, they can look at all those components, not just production. And there's a lot of room. There are many opportunities even to make money. So I would encourage them really to be open-minded and love the sector as well, because you can introduce a number of things. Like now, digitization is the thing. You can apply it in production, you can apply it in marketing, you can apply it in processing, you can apply it in transportation, get information, and even just providing advisory services. And that is one thing we have also realized in the seed subsector. Seed is very broad, but people tend to focus on one element, and that is production. And yet there is breeding, there's production, there's the awareness creation, there's marketing, there's policy, there's quality control. So that's why even in CESA, in this Center of Excellence for Seed System, we are saying no, let's provide holistic service to guide and strengthen the seed system by looking at all those components of seed system, not just on one.
Thank you, George. Jennifer, a question for you, that the challenges have been discussed before. We are closer to 2030. What progress have we seen?
What progress have we seen? I think we have seen progress in terms of the awareness, the emergence of new interventions, programs, etc. Even talking about the 4K Club and how that went from a good initiative that went through almost a valley of not taking off, but then it was realized how critical that was. So I think the awareness is there. What we've experienced in the past year, however, is also, of course, with the pandemic, that a lot of challenges and weaknesses that we had, including our engagement of youth in agriculture, have been amplified again. So I think looking forward, this is really about putting youth at the heart of some of the key decisions that we're making. We hear it resonate all over. Agriculture is not seen as an attractive sector. And the change has to come from within us, because our financial institutions see it as high risk. When we look at the Malabo Declaration and the investments of our countries, we're not always living up to some of the targets that we have. So I think it's really about a holistic approach and all key actors saying future, and then prioritize what needs to happen. We have heard what the challenges are. Is there access to land, access to finance? And the technology is there. They will pick it up. We will have more young farmers like yourself who might out of default to the agriculture sector, but I think that once there is a living to be made, this will be something that we will see you taking up.
Thank you, Jennifer. And I'm glad you brought out COVID-19, because there's a question here for you, Cass. I mean, they say that it's been observed that there are policies towards taking the measures to curb the pandemic have somehow increased challenges for the youth. So how is the ministry and partners responding to better respond to the needs of the youth so that we can build forward better?
I think, let me thank the person that has asked that question, because we have already a program which is running and the youth can be able to quickly take advantage of that program. We developed the Kenya Youth in Agribusiness Strategy, which is a strategy that was developed to be able, of course, in consultation with the youth in all the 47 counties, to understand the challenges that they were facing and hindering them from actively participating in the agriculture sector. About 11 key strategic issues came up, some of which Jennifer has mentioned: inadequate knowledge, skills, and information, inadequate lack of affordable financing, issues of negative perception, issues of market, and so forth. And we have developed a program which is called Enable Youth, which we are taking the youth into incubation. We want them to understand the whole value chain in terms of the opportunities that are there. And as my colleagues say, the opportunities are not only in production, but along the agricultural value chain. So again, through the incubation, the youth will be able to choose the subsector of their choice, be it fisheries, be it livestock, be it crops. And then again, we support them in terms of identifying the opportunities along the value chain, and then giving them financing. We have financing components of 0%, 5%, and also the government is also putting in a risk guarantee fund, so that we can be able to also have commercial lending in the financial institutions. So again, taking advantage of these programs by the government, and these programs are not focusing on the group. You know, initially we used to finance youth as a group, and from our consultations, the youth said, okay, it's okay to finance us from a group perspective, but also can we tailor programs where you support us as an individual, and then we employ 5 or 10 other youth. And government being in the space where it is all about consultation and also consideration of what comes from the youth, we designed this specific program where we say the youth will be funded from an individual perspective, and then they go and set up sustainable businesses. I think that is one of the programs that already has 520 youth who are already in their training. It started, they were onboarded in June this year. And by October, they should start receiving their financing to start their businesses along the agricultural value chain. Again, we'll be calling up another call for proposal in October for the second cohort, and I would want to encourage the youth to also take advantage of this. I would also want to make an encouragement that we also look at the Kenya Youth in Agribusiness Strategy, because the strategy also highlights various opportunities along the agricultural value chains. Of course, looking at the cooperative sector, looking at the fisheries subsector, livestock, and all that. So again, in that strategy, we have highlighted opportunities again in the various subsectors which the youth can also be able to partake of. And lastly, as I close, maybe answering or maybe making a comment from what my sister here has said, we don't want agriculture to be, the last resort. Like, I really don't have something to do, or maybe I don't have a job. We want it to be the choice, a career choice by design. And that's why it's critical to pass on the children from primary school, then we transition them to high school, of course, tweaking the programming to speak to each age set. And then again, once they leave these institutions, by default, they'll say, okay, I want to become a farmer, because they were taken through all that through the education system. So this one has to be very deliberate so that we can then engage in agriculture. The same way we say, I want to become an engineer or a doctor, is the same way we want that to work for agriculture, but it has to start when they are at the formative age.
Thank you, Cass Nyaga. There's a question for you, John, and Farmer on Fire. The journalist says, you might know this better. Are the youth actually interested in agriculture? What have you learned so far, having built business in agriculture?
And then John can, come in. Thank you for that question. I feel that question is a yes and no. We are in transition and we are getting there, especially with the support of the people who are in the panel here today, AGRA, and just the government has been doing a lot of initiative as well. And we are taking on that job to just cascade that information to the ground. The youth we have huge statistics of unemployment. So they are looking for solutions in desperation, but they're also seeing that there is an opportunity because there's a rising middle class that has more money to even buy more food or better food, better high-value food. And that means that high-value crops are also coming up, which the youth are very interested in. Like myself, I grow mushrooms, strawberries, and rabbits. All these are high-product, high-value crops because I am an urban farmer. I can't literally afford to grow maize, yet I have limitation of space. So it's also about strategic positioning. It's also about innovation and technology, which the youth are very, they jump on it and they're using it even in their daily hustle in the agricultural industry. But on the part of no, it's still a stigma. It's still a journey that we have to take to show them that it's not a punishment as it has been showcased before. But in the wake of the COVID, this has really helped push that message of you can farm where you are, you can make money where you are. And if you've been compromised by the pandemic and you've had to go back to the rural areas, we have digital platforms that can still put you on the map. You can still be able to make your sales, you can make your farm sales, you can get information on how to farm. Yeah, so it is a good space currently, and me being even on this podium is evidence that we are moving ahead towards the goal.
That's really good. Coming back to you, John, so same question. Are the youth interested in agriculture, and what have you learned about building sustainable business in agriculture?
And I think I'll echo what Wangari also mentioned. So if we looked at the progress that we've made so far in the past few years or thereabouts, it's been incredible in terms of getting young people involved in agriculture. Previously, when you ask most of the young people that we have about what the image of agriculture looks like, everybody instantaneously just pictured that poor old wretched man in the village, or saying that that's the old image of the farmer. But right now, we are changing that mindset. So we started from changing that approach to say, look, farmers are not tagged as poor farmers, right? The farmer is a noble profession that you can make fortune from it. So that mindset has always been what is driving us to, first of all, and that's what Jennifer mentioned, that we need to, first of all, create that awareness. And we've been able to do that through the help of social media platform, organizing conference meetings or school tour, just talking to young kids and university graduates about the potentials that exist in agriculture. But beyond that, what I think is young people are actually very much interested in agriculture. The tide is changing right now, but we need to continually drive that conversation to say, how can we sustain their interest in agriculture? So we have seen the influx of people moving out of the country, traveling outside of the continents to look for a better opportunity elsewhere. COVID-19 pandemic has also affected so many businesses as well. But one thing that I think we have done or we should be doing is the fact that we need to be able to upscale them and we need to be able to support them with capacity development program. And I'll talk for one of the examples that we launched recently in South Africa, where we launched a training program for 1 year with one of the renowned business schools in South Africa to train young agriculture 1 year on the science of agriculture, on the business of agriculture, and also on the mechanization side of agriculture. When they have this basic knowledge, they tend to either play their big roles in productions, play their big roles across the value chain as well. So again, the discussions have to go beyond this podium. It has to go to the grassroots where we have a number of farmers. I always say this: there are two different categories of young people, and we tend to focus on the other one. So we have the young people who have less educations in the village. Those are the ones practicing major farm productions and all of that. And then we have the other young people who have educations. They're in the city, but they tend to have access to most of this information. They have access to trainings, to program. But come to think of it, there's clear gap between these two categories. So we have to see how best we need to take this training, take this knowledge transfer, take finances back to the village where we have a number of these young people, and then ensure that there's no gap or distinction between who is the educated one and who is the less educated one as well. So all of this discussion comes back to, one, changing the narrative in terms of mindsets, two, supporting with incentive, program capacity and finances that we need to really catapult or scale up our agricultural innovations. And thirdly is building that collaborative approach where young people teach themselves. And I've seen this over the past year where we organize a number of training. We use someone's farm who is also a youth. He allowed us to use his farm and he also do that training free of charge. So that shows that we are able to transfer, when we collaborate together, transfer knowledge and support one another.
Thank you so much, John. I think we're coming to a close, but I think there is a question for you, George, about accessing the center. How can people access the center? This is from Uganda.
Okay. The center is going to be up and running starting next year. And it will be open for everyone, especially those involved in seed business. All they need to do is to come to the center. You can come physically, or you can reach us online and seek services you want, because we are going to offer a wide range of services. Services in terms of provision of catalytic grants. We shall be providing technical advice. We shall be providing models. We shall be providing digital tools. We shall be linking those who are interested in finance to financial institutions we have partnered with. And we shall also be providing alliances and networks. As our institution, and the name of our institution states, Alliance, yes, we shall continue providing that platform of bringing different players together for cross-fertilization so that they can learn from each other, and that will also entail taking them outside to see how things are being done. So feel free to reach us by visiting us at AGRA here in Nairobi, or even in our regional or country offices, or alternatively, you can reach us online.
Thank you very much, George. We are actually exactly on time. I will close the media briefing. Thank you so much for your time. It's all about strategic positioning, innovation, and research, and leveraging on the opportunities which are there for the youth. Thank you, panelists.